Dragonstone Beach, night. Grey Worm leads Varys, hands bound, down the beach.
I told you what would happen if you betrayed me.
You did.
Lord Varys, I, Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of my name, breaker of chains and mother of dragons, sentence you to die. Dracarys.
Drogon spews fire on him, but we don't watch our old friend burn. Instead, we see the reactions of those who knew him. Tyrion is heartbroken. Jon is disturbed. Grey Worm sees this as the just execution of a traitor.
Have you shot your final scenes yet? And are you happy with how things ended? Yes. She didn't say yes.
Best season ever!
While Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces, they certainly haven't forgotten about her.
And the Golden Company has arrived in King's Landing, courtesy of the Greyjoy fleet. The balance has grown distressingly even.
While Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces, they certainly haven't forgotten about her.
I, Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of my name, breaker of chains and mother of dragons, sentence you to die.
I think most of you are familiar with those humiliating inside the episode videos that Benioff and Weiss put out during Season 8, with them saying things like, Dany kind of forgot about Euron's fleet 10 minutes after she was told about it in a council meeting. They have always been like this in behind-the-scenes videos, saying absurd things like, creatively it made sense to us because we wanted it to happen. That was a big one from Season 5. Or, well, you know, we've always said the Tyrells were weak fighters to justify Highgarden falling so quickly, and no, you have never said that phrase before. Or, we reconceived the role to make it worthy of the actor's talents. Among others. That this wasn't a downward spiral. Season 8 wasn't an accident. It got really bad since Season 5 onwards when they went off book overtly, but since the beginning there have been problems with these guys, since the failed pilot. And they stopped hiding it as much starting in Season 5, but it wasn't just Season 8. They've been like this for years. It's Season 5 is when all the book fan sites, major things that work with Martin, gave up on them. Like Westeros.org, that this isn't a new problem. So it's not just these inside the episodes, and if you're going to say, wow, I only noticed until this year, did you watch all of the behind-the-scenes videos before this year? A lot of major news sites didn't even review these things, and they didn't feel like reporting on it. They felt like reporting on whatever cast news or fan theory there was out this week, so you didn't notice when they were acting this silly and offensive. My running theory of why did so many people even notice in Season 8 is partially because it was so crazy that they felt compelled to check out the behind-the-scenes stuff. Also, with the advance of time, a lot more people are watching it on streaming services by Season 8 than were in Season 5. And before the Inside the Episodes stuff, I remember they posted it free to their YouTube channel. By Season 8, it was incorporated into the HBO Now video stream. It aired on the same video right after the credits. You didn't have to load something else. It was considered part of the episode's runtime, the stream's runtime after the credits. So I think that's also how it was easier for people to see these by Season 8. They were, even as they got even more ridiculous, they were actively promoting them even more. Like, why would they blame us for how the heck did the fans see a promo video we ourselves produced and put out and tried to reach as many people as possible with? Whatever the case, many people did watch those, finally, by Season 8 itself. They generated a huge backlash, and people saw Benioff and Weiss the same way book fans have seen them since Season 5. Smug, narcissistic frauds who have no idea what they're talking about. Nonetheless, HBO mysteriously didn't release the Inside the Episode for the series finale, Episode 6 of Season 8. And at first we thought, well, maybe it's because they wanted the finale itself to be so emotionally impactful that they don't just immediately launch into an after show. They want to fade to black, I get that. But day after day passed, and they didn't load it anywhere, even to their YouTube channel. What we think happened is that HBO itself realized the backlash they were generating from those crazy inside the episodes, which were going viral. They were turning into memes. HBO is not that oblivious that they realized the blowback they were getting over that. Mainstream news was reporting on them. So we think they yanked the last one from public release. Did they think a specific thing in it was particularly embarrassing or purely based on how bad the first 5 were? We're not sure. But we have circumstantial evidence that the international markets had said they would air it, so we're pretty sure they pulled it from public release on their website and their streaming services. However, they did release it with the Blu-ray set the following December as a standalone double-length version titled Duty is the Death of Love, but it's in the style of one of the Inside the episodes. You can tell it's part of the same set of interviews filmed the same day. And what I think is happening here is that HBO wanted to bury it and hide it as much as possible without being accused of hiding it, that if you never release it, that looks really suspicious. But delaying it for a couple of months until the buzz wears off from Season 8, then quietly releasing it in the Blu-ray, people wouldn't say that's trying to avoid scrutiny as much, that it would be weird if you never saw it. How many people actually sit down and watch these from start to finish? But in a checklist, you can see on the Blu-ray stuff, oh, they're releasing all the other commentaries. I'm not going to watch those. If it didn't have it, that would be suspicious. And moreover, news sites still reporting on the show after Season 5 were just hype news that never scrutinized the behind-the-scenes videos from these Blu-ray sets. They never caused trouble before when it's just quietly put out on the Blu-ray months later. Even though they say stuff in the Season 5 Blu-rays that would end the career of other screenwriters, these crazy admissions of how incompetent they are and that they don't know how writing works. So, my YouTube channel here is literally the only place online that anyone has found, I'm aware of nothing else, that actually reported on the lost inside the episode for the finale that was buried on the Blu-ray. That I actually posted clips from it. I posted the whole thing up on my site, check it out at the link, and it's filled with all sorts of nonsense of them claiming that they were planning the show out since Season 3, only to then a minute later casually admit, oh yeah, this thing here is something we came up with last year, at multiple points. That, you know, with all they openly admitted, like, Are You Killing the Night King is something we came up with in Season 7, in the one for Episode 5, and in this one they'll cycle back and try to claim we planned it all out, when there's other points where you forget that you're supposed to be lying and admit to things. Probably the most surreal one was when Benioff actually tried to claim that Martin hadn't even finished the 5th novel by Season 3, which, guys, that was published 1 month after the Season 1 finale. There are only 5 books, and you're off by 2 years. You should know that. He didn't forget. He's trying to put a spin on it. He's lying. And it's such a ridiculous lie that we can Google this. We know when the book came out. It's a humiliating mess, and you can see why HBO wanted to bury it. So check out all the clips for that. I posted it up around this Christmas because the Blu-ray came out in December. Then, a few days later, a few days after Christmas, someone pointed out to me, from posting this first hidden video, someone went, oh, there's this other hidden one, are you aware of it? And it's not from the Blu-ray, but it's from their YouTube channel. Another video that, like the Inside the episode, HBO tried to sweep under the rug back during the final episodes of Season 8, when the backlash was so extreme. They were getting a lot of negative comments on their YouTube behind-the-scenes videos. They'd start taking them down. Because they don't just post the Inside the episode, but a few other clips from that set of interviews on more specific topics. HBO took down a video they posted for episode 5, which was actually titled The Mad Queen, about Daenerys. The problem is that they didn't simply delete it, but they delisted it. But by that point, it had had a few thousand views. People had seen it, knew it existed, and could share it around with other people. That when you delist a video, instead of setting it to private or something, it doesn't show up in search, but direct URL links still work. And holy Christ, to this day, over a year later, this Daenerys the Mad Queen video is still online at its original link. Follow the link below. If HBO sees my reports and tries to desperately pull it down, don't bother. This has been up for so many months that we, the online analysis community, all the YouTube channels, we've already saved copies of it offline. Nothing would be achieved by deleting it except admitting your guilt. That we realized this is so sensitive and they wanted to hide it that we should save copies of it while we still can. And I've posted highlight clips of it to my channel, so you can check those out too. What was so bad about this video that they needed to hide it? It contains footage of Emilia Clarke trying to explain Daenerys' turn to attacking King's Landing in episode 5, and what she says doesn't correspond to what actually happens in the episode. In broad terms, she doesn't get too specific, but she does firmly state Daenerys is not insane. And she says, you could call this Targaryen madness, it doesn't deserve that, she's not insane. And she's trying to explain Daenerys' emotional state. It doesn't sound like they explained it clearly to her. The problem is that in the lost inside the episode for the finale, when you pair these two together, Benioff and Weiss directly state that Daenerys is insane, just like her father, the Mad King. Which is a pretty heartless thing to say to all the people out there who are the children of abusive parents who came to see Dany as a hero, who rose above that. So, I edited clips from both videos together in a contrast montage back on, this was December 29th, and the video got nearly 250,000 views. So this started a lot of discussion. If we were all really baffled by these bizarre statements they were making in these hidden videos, particularly when you cross-reference them, that Clarke is directly contradicting the showrunners. They overtly state Daenerys is insane like her father. Clarke says she is not insane. What's going on here? There's a mismatch. So now I'm going to run an extended clip from that contrast montage from the two videos and pay close attention to what they're saying. Is Emilia describing the same thing as them?
It's so natural for a person to retort to anger. And so that's exactly where she goes. And it's there. It's always been there. It's what's driven her throughout everything.
I guess I didn't see particularly that Dany would just firebomb the city.
Here comes that familiar feeling of anger, and she doesn't do anything to choke that. She lives in it. It's this feeling that you could call Targaryen craziness, you could give it all of these names that it doesn't deserve, because it is just grief. It's hurt. And she has this ability to make that hurt a little bit less just for a minute. And here she is sitting on this ridge, and there's the emotion, and there's the feeling is to fucking kill her. Sorry.
I don't think that Grey Worm can ever really see Dany as the Mad Queen. To him, she actually has a very clear sense of what's right and what's wrong.
When you feel that much failure and disappointment and shame and hurt and lost love, there's only so much pain you can handle before you snap.
Please, Dany.
Can't hide behind small mercies.
There's this discussion through the whole show of whether or not Daenerys is like her father, who was insane. Throughout the whole conversation they have, she really maintains like a reasonable approach to the thing that she's done. There are only a few places where something peeks out that tells him what's really coming. What about everyone else?
They don't get to choose. Shall we begin?
Do we have a plan?
I think Dany's been becoming a Targaryen ever since the end of season 1.
She's not her father, and she's not insane, and she's not a sadist, but there's a Targaryen ruthlessness that comes with even the good Targaryens. She knows she has won this war. It's in that moment when she makes the decision to make this personal. It's one of my favorite Emilia performance moments because it took place on the back of like a giant green dragon buck without a real thing anywhere in sight.
Ultimately, she is who she is, and that's a Targaryen. And, you know, she has said repeatedly throughout the show, I will take what is mine with fire and blood. And in this episode, she does it. I think Dany's been becoming a Targaryen ever since the end of season 1.
She's not her father, and she's not insane, and she's not a sadist, but there's a Targaryen ruthlessness that comes with even the good Targaryens. There's this discussion through the whole show of whether or not Daenerys is like her father, who was insane. Throughout the whole conversation they have, she really maintains like a reasonable approach to the thing that she's done. There are only a few places where something peeks out that tells him what's really coming.
It's this feeling that you could call Targaryen craziness, you could give it all of these names that it doesn't deserve.
So, since Christmas break, since around New Year's, we've all been trying to make sense of this, everyone trying to analyze it from the clips I post on my channel. Why does Emilia Clarke's description not match the actual episode? And slowly we began to suspect that they might have drastically rewritten Season 8 at the last minute, even as they were making it. Yet for other reasons I'll get into, we already thought that they heavily rewrote Season 8 after Season 7 aired. That the version of Season 8 that was released isn't what they were planning when they were making Season 7, and we know that from several startling cast admissions, like Lena Headey stating, I filmed a Cersei miscarriage scene, but they deleted it at the last minute. That must have drastically altered her storyline. So we already knew Season 8 wasn't quite what they were planning in Season 7, but now it doesn't seem like what we got was what Emilia Clarke was exposed to at that initial filming script table read, the one they have clips of, back in October of 2017. That it seems like she's going off of an earlier script and they didn't tell her about these updates. And as the video clips will point out here, she filmed the entire destruction of King's Landing on a green screen, her dragon rig on a green screen, and she never saw it was actually happening. So, did she not get an update? Did they outright lie to her? What is going on here? This isn't like saying, oh, maybe Kit Harington didn't quite know because, you know, you're filming, you don't see everything they add in post, but he's still on a set on the ground. No, Emilia was in a green screen room with nothing else in it. Well, what did Emilia Clarke have to say herself about this in her own commentary track for Season 8? Issue is, she recorded one commentary for the finale with Benioff and Weiss themselves. And I've been posting clips from this for the past couple of weeks. Please check those out. And our analysis of, is she just playing nice for them? That she's laughing at all of their jokes, even ones at her expense. And this isn't how she's behaved in any other interview before or after this, where she's been one of the cast members who's been the most open to our criticisms of Season 8, instead of attacking us, going, yeah, guys, I know it was kind of weird. And that she's this cheerful in this one interview appearance commentary and in nothing else, it really feels like she's just all fake smiles for the boss. And she doesn't really believe this, and now and then she'll hint out something she's upset about. but we've been going through a whole video series on this, more than is covered in here. You've seen this. How many other times have you seen a cast member really obviously going through the motions of praising season 8 and you thought it seemed really fake? So this is not the time for huge, overt revelations. She can't in front of them, but try to read between the lines of what she's trying to imply to us. Now, the clip I'm about to post is entirely new. I have never posted this online before. It is new even for my current subscribers who've been following me through all this past few weeks. This is the last set of clips that I'm posting up from the finale's audio commentary. And here, Emilia describes filming episode 5, given that we're watching the immediate aftermath in episode 6. She recalls, okay, this is what 5 was like, that I didn't see this.
But I remember we both found this very difficult to shoot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And it's funny as well, because I remember in this scene, he's so upset. And I remember kind of logically thinking, yeah, okay, yeah, I get it. But I had no idea what it looked like before we shot this. I wasn't aware. I think I'd probably saved myself from it so that I could kind of give her, Daenerys, as much,
right.
You know,
well, you've been
ground
high
of
up,
like,
you've been
what do you
way
mean?
up above.
Exactly.
In your bomber, you haven't really seen the devastation.
Yeah.
He conspired behind my back with my enemies.
Emilia Clarke explains that she, quote, saved herself from seeing any materials that actually visually explain what the destruction of King's Landing was like. And then David Benioff interjects and starts talking over her to supply the explanation, almost as if he's worried that she'll say more than that. You know, yes, Emilia, because Dany wouldn't have seen what's on the ground, and putting words in her mouth. That's weird, and in and of itself, I'll get into that later in this documentary, but what's clear from it right now is that, yes, Emilia Clarke is stating, I knew absolutely nothing about what the destruction of King's Landing was like, to the point she reveals this anecdote that she was outright confused about Kit Harington's performance as Jon Snow in their final scene in the throne room. She said, I'm confused about why is Kit Jon reacting like this, practically crying, really upset about Dany's actions, and then she admits, it's because I was not aware of it to the same extent that Kit was when I was filming this final scene. In short, Emilia Clarke never saw any of the storyboards. Literally all she had to go on was what was in the filming script itself, in plain text, a handful of lines, from the table read. And then she filmed the entire sequence on a dragon rig in a green screen room, just this green void. Now, I'm going to be referring to this repeatedly throughout this documentary, so I want to make one thing clear. Emilia Clarke did state that I saved myself from seeing all the materials explaining what the destruction of the city was like, by extension saying I didn't see anything other than the script. Storyboard sketches, or they have these computer-generated previs animatics, a variety of other visualizations. So while she didn't say that word for word, it's pretty clear that this isn't me twisting her words. She said, I saw nothing. I saved myself from it. So, other than the script, which we saw her at a table read, she's saying, I didn't read the storyboards, I didn't see the previses, to the point I didn't even understand what Kit Harington was reacting to as Jon. So the point is, this isn't an assumption I'm making that she didn't see anything, but throughout this documentary, rather than say in long form, Emilia directly stated that, quote, I saved myself from seeing all visual materials and therefore she didn't read the storyboards or the previs animatics and CGI, etc., etc., etc. For shorthand, I'm going to say Emilia didn't see the storyboards. Just for short, because that's a mouthful. But this is what I am referring to, this cited clip. Are we all okay with this? That you're saying you didn't see any of the pre-visualizations. I'm saying that is didn't see the storyboards. No visual representations. Right? Right. I don't think anyone would argue with that from the way she says it, too. If I knew nothing, I was in a green void, I had to imagine it. So, why is it that in those behind-the-scenes videos, Emilia Clarke is giving a very different description of the attack on King's Landing, contradicting the showrunners and saying Daenerys is not insane, her actions are not insane? These promo videos, those behind-the-scenes videos, these were filmed before the premiere. And as she explains in other clips I'll post, the premiere was the first time Emilia even saw the finished episodes, that she did not see the final few episodes with a group of people at all. They had a screening for episode 3 before the public premiere. She saw that, but she didn't see this. That her comments in the Mad Queen Daenerys video are because it's based solely on her exposure to the script and nothing else. Leading to the question I'm going to address in the rest of this part here, what was in the filming script she saw? If she had no other input, no storyboards, what did she have to go on from that filming script? And that's why I got access to the copy of the script kept at the Writers Guild archives. And as I go through all of this, the thing I want you to keep in your minds at all times, it's not just I'm reading this to you. Remember, Emilia Clarke hadn't seen the finished visuals. We have. So, in the words of Yoda, you have to unlearn what you have learned. That we have hindsight if we know what these explosions looked like, and we might be reading into them. Oh, I guess that's what they're referring to. Don't make those assumptions. Try to put yourself in the mindset of Emilia Clarke reading this cold, with no CGI explosions. She didn't see the episode. What would Emilia Clarke make of this, reading it for the table read in October 2017 with nothing else to have a basis for her interpretation of it? The mental image of it that she's describing in those mismatching behind-the-scenes videos. I've read through the script, and trying to put myself in her mindset, I have two broad takeaways from it. So we've established that Emilia Clarke had no idea what was actually happening in the episode because she was on a green screen rig, and she didn't read the storyboards, and all she had to go on was the original filming script. What was in it? Well, by way of comparison first, let me refresh you on this, that in the final aired version of the episode, Daenerys burns all of King's Landing, rather than just fly straight to the Red Keep. And they even show her dragon zigzagging back and forth in saturation bombing runs of the streets. Which is bizarre, given that Emilia herself in her behind-the-scenes video phrases it as, she wants to effing kill her. Kill her, that is, kill Cersei in the Red Keep. That the sight of the Red Keep drives her into a rage against Cersei. And then she's taking her time, they said, making it personal by killing the civilians Cersei doesn't even care about. What? And instead she just keeps attacking the city. This isn't even carving a path of destruction in a straight line to the Red Keep. It is back and forth saturation bombing runs. People were horrified when they saw this. It looks very intentional. And also, in the episode leading up to this, episode 4, where they're setting everything up, they had two separate scenes, one with Cersei and then one with Tyrion and Varys, emphasizing that Cersei was bringing refugees into the city and the Red Keep itself to act as human shields, so Daenerys wouldn't dare attack or risk killing them in the crossfire. And these all seem like relics of abandoned storylines, but we don't really have any proof yet. But ignoring that for now, something that caught my eye even the night this episode premiered, when I was watching it live for the first time, because I pay attention to details. What caught my eye were the small explosions of green wildfire going off in the city. And more importantly, that it has no narrative impact whatsoever, and no one remarks on it at all in dialogue. This alone is strange, because wildfire is basically super napalm. A teaspoon of the substance hits the ground, and an entire city street can be ignited. It burns hot enough to melt steel. It can burn underwater. It can only be stopped by fully smothering it with sand, and if it's really burning, it'll melt the sand first. Wildfire is what was used to destroy Stannis Baratheon's fleet back in Season 2 with that huge explosion, and which Cersei used to blow up the Great Sept later at the end of Season 6. Recall the specifics of Bronn's dialogue back in Season 2 with the head pyromancer, played by the late, great Roy Dotrice, where Bronn is concerned about firing it from catapults at Stannis' fleet. They later decide to put it on fire ships. It'll be safer that way. He says, if we're launching it from catapults atop our own city walls, if one man panics and accidentally drops even one jar of this stuff, it could ignite and spread uncontrollably, taking out the entire city.
The substance burns so hot, it melts wood, stone, even steel. The substance is fire given form, and we have been perfecting it since the days of Magor.
To do what?
The jars are put in catapults and flung at the enemy.
I don't know if you've ever seen a battle, old man, but things can get a bit messy. Because when we're flinging things at Stannis, he's flinging them right back at us. Men die, men shit themselves, men run, which means pots falling, which means fire inside the walls.
They spent a lot of time emphasizing how volatile and uncontrollable the substance is. Yet, in these finished shots, the few green puffs of wildfire we see are treated as incidental, and they're going off in a city that is already swept by dragonfire from one end to the other, so it has no impact. That raised my suspicions, even the first time I saw it live. And I made a mental note that when we get the Blu-ray stuff, when we get all these other materials, when scripts become available, I need to scrutinize any evidence related to wildfire in this episode. So when I finally did get access to the script for episode 8.5, this is how it describes wildfire going off in the city. Pages 36 and 37, Red Keep interior, Cersei's chambers. In the window, a distant green explosion as one of the Mad King's old hidden caches of wildfire goes up, an ironic echo of her own destruction of the Great Sept. The fire is spreading across the city quickly. She heads for the door, trying to remain strong, though all of her strength has left her. In the window she has left behind, another green explosion. This filming script is describing a wildfire chain reaction, accidentally being set off by Daenerys' attacks on Lannister soldiers. It's the wildfire chain reaction that does most of the destruction of the city, not Daenerys and her dragon. It says, spreading across the city quickly, and the level of destruction by the wildfire is compared to, quote, an ironic echo of Cersei blowing up the Great Sept. This is not what we see in the final version. For this specific scene I'm screenshotting this, look at this. They show Daenerys zigzagging back and forth to intentionally set the entire city on fire from one end to the other in saturation bombing runs, not in a hurry to get to the Red Keep. You see multiple wide shots from Cersei's tower window in the Red Keep, giving a wide shot of much of the city, showing that vast swaths of it are already on fire with normal red dragon fire and secondary fires from that. And then as she turns to leave, we see a few puffs of green flame from wildfire just starting to pop up, not causing noticeable destruction, in the middle of a city-wide inferno stretching from horizon to horizon. It's a few green puffs in an inferno. The wildfire is not shown spreading throughout the city, starting to spread. It's a puff here, puff there. Does this look in the final version like what the script is describing and explaining? The script says that Daenerys' attacks on retreating Lannister soldiers ignite wildfire caches, which then spread through the entire city. This is not what we are seeing here. The wildfire chain reaction that the script presents has been removed. Now, I've been warning you in the lead up to this that the full extent of what actually happened behind the scenes is only apparent when you look at both sets of evidence. The script and the behind-the-scenes Blu-ray commentaries cross-referenced thoroughly. A handful of people out there might try to argue that, well, this text is describing what we saw on screen. It's just worded a little inaccurately, or you're misinterpreting it. No. It clearly says wildfire is spreading across the city. But all such doubt is removed when we cross-reference with the Blu-ray commentary for this episode by the VFX team. Now listen to this clip of the commentary by producer Chris Newman and VFX supervisor Joe Bauer.
And then the green fire.
Right, left by the Mad King, Danny's pup. It'd be odd if you didn't know that part of the throne's history. You'd wonder why where this green fire is coming from.
Yeah. I did have people asking me about that quite a lot.
Did you explain it?
As best I could, Joe.
Those are the pubs going up.
Yeah. No, it was basically like, they thought it had all gone when they did the sept.
Oh, yeah. Well, the lore is that it's spread out in the sewers underneath the whole city, isn't that it?
Yeah, I suppose so. You'd think that she took a bit of a chance blowing the sept up. It could have. Well, she didn't know where the rest. She didn't know where the rest of it was stored. And I was always hoping that we'd do a moment where you see the green fire, and that's when he says it's really not safe here. It's like the wildfire's going. We've got to go. But it's not commented on at all. It's just something you had to pick up. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been good. So that's where your line would have been headed. So that was supposed to be originally conceived as a wildfire shot, but got changed into not a wildfire shot.
The VFX team commentary directly confirmed that shots of dragonfire spreading and exploding through the city in the final aired version of the episode were originally intended to be wildfire explosions. They admitted in as many words that they changed the shot. This is not a matter of us misinterpreting a vaguely worded script. They just confirmed that, yes, the archived script sample I'm presenting here is from a different, alternate, earlier draft. This is a change. And all this time, they've been claiming, no, this is legitimate because this is the ending that we've been moving towards since season 3. And here you are, with your own eyes, looking at an earlier draft from within season 8 itself, so late in development that they sent it to the Writers Guild archives. What's helpful, of course, is that, you think about it, it's easy to distinguish regular fire or dragon fire from wildfire because dragonfire, regular fire are red and orange. Wildfire burns green. Imagine if wildfire was the same color, if it was just red. You can shoot different explosions out of context, edit them together to change the meaning. But, it helps us, it's green. It had to be changed outright, relatively late in production. And VFX is always one of the last things finished. They said they were working on this through first week of May, but they're always one of the last things. But I made a separate clip of that, scrutinizing over their specific words. Back it up and listen to that again. The way they say it sounds really nervous, like they don't want to spill the beans. The way he says, when people ask about the few green puffs, what do you tell them? I explain it as best I can. Like the double meaning there, that they don't want to reveal there was an alternate earlier version of this that was changed. But that might be reading into it a little bit. It's the way they say it, but regardless of the way they say it, they confirmed, oh yeah, this is supposed to be wildfire, we changed it. But once again, what's crucial is cross-referencing the two sets of evidence. That if you just read the script, you might think it's just worded strangely, but not put two and two together. And what about people watching this public Blu-ray commentary? Well, first, hardly anyone, just looking around on YouTube this past year, hardly anyone, I don't think any other channel than mine or website, has actually reviewed every single Blu-ray commentary down to the level of leaving no stone unturned, and even methodically watching through all the more obscure commentaries. I didn't just watch the one with Emilia Clarke, I watched every one by the technical staff. Because I knew there might be just one stray mention where they go, oh yeah, we had to change this when we were building it. And they did. But even for those who did, try to skim through this and watch, okay, it's a VFX commentary, you might not pick up on what they're saying. That in very guarded statements, they go, oh yeah, this shot here was originally Dragonfire. We changed it to Wildfire. You might not pick up on that they're not just talking about this one angle shot here. They're talking about the entire sequence on the scale of the entire city. There is a citywide wildfire explosion and conflagration. This thing is going off. So when you put two and two together, that no, they're describing the entire sequence. This is specifically what makes Jon Snow desperately shout to his men that they have to fall back and retreat out of the city at the end, before the flames consume them. It isn't from, oh no, the dragon fire is spreading because the city's burning. It's specifically because they're getting overwhelmed by wildfire, and these specific shots, you can hear his voice, fall back, that they're saying it's a reaction to wildfire going off all around them. That they're fleeing from the wildfire chain reaction very specifically. For God's sake, there's concept art! There's concept art of this original version. Concept artist Dumitrescu, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's a Romanian, lives in Romania. One of the official concept artists who works on the show, officially credited for working on Season 8, posted some of his artwork on his website. This is all official, not a mock-up, not a leak. Publicly released. And this isn't the same as what we saw in the on-screen version. You see, in the final version, we see a few bits of green wildfire mixed in with red dragonfire, but is it immediately clear to the audience that it's an unintentional chain reaction, even a chain reaction of dragonfire? Well, no, because the way it's edited in such a way that it's intercut with shots of the dragon, giving the mental impression that the fireballs that Jon is reacting to are from dragon blasts happening just off screen. That they don't depict the dragon clearly already heading to the Red Keep, but the fires are spreading behind it. You can't really tell what the geography of the battle is going on. That it seems like they're dodging blasts from the dragon, not chain reactions, much less a wildfire chain reaction from halfway across the city that was unintentional. So this specific shot, you see it's exactly like the concept art. The point where in the commentary you can hear Jon shouting, "Fall back!" The archway is the same, but it feels like more of a battle, that there's more soldiers, and there's a lot more wildfire there. And the concept artist's website even has a note on this page that says, "This was a treat to imagine a situation where wildfire explosions interrupt the battle." These are the instructions he was given, that wildfire explosions, not dragonfire, are happening on such a big scale that the armies that are attacking decide they have to retreat. That it's not just a few puffs in the background, it's enough that it forces them to retreat. It interrupts the whole battle. So it was specifically an out-of-control wildfire chain reaction that devastates King's Landing, not Daenerys going insane and carpet bombing it for no reason. They didn't even think to hide this concept art from public release. Based on the original script, none of this is a leak. These are all publicly posted concept art. The Writers Guild scripts are open to the public so long as you visit physically. Well, if you are a news site like Nerdist, Forbes, Esquire, other people have written about Game of Thrones, or another major YouTube channel like Ideas of Ice and Fire, Red Team Review, Gray Area, all the good ones. If you are another news channel and you want to report on my findings here, I guess it would probably be a good idea to use this abandoned concept art of the original version as a visual aid in your own reports, that we have an image to go along with it, beyond just a simple plain text of the script. Seeing them paired like this has a lot of impact. So either screenshot my video here, or I'm going to link to the artist's original page on their website in the description box below. Follow the link to get a high-res version of this, good quality version of this concept art of it. I don't know if HBO will make them take it down at this point. I mean, I already have a copy and I'm going to spread it. So use that. It's great to have a visual aid. What are the wider implications of the wildfire chain reaction? Well, if you've been following my channel, a fan theory, and this is still half theory, the theory circulating for some time is that Daenerys was originally going to accidentally trigger a wildfire chain reaction, specifically by attacking the Red Keep, as sort of the Red Keep as a central hub for all the wildfire caches hidden in a network throughout the city and tunnels. And this was due to all the mismatching dialogue in Season 8 that seemed to be relics of earlier drafts. I have a separate video talking about this, see it linked below, on all this relic dialogue that in Episode 4, every time they talk about Dany's going to attack the Red Keep and the human shields in it, Red Keep and not the city, their mouths aren't pointed at the screen. So I think these are all ADR lines that were dubbed in post. Not that they were intentionally dubbed in. Like any episode of television usually dubs in a lot of audio, like Lord of the Rings. Most of the audio is dubbed in post by the same actors just to get the sound right. And given that you wouldn't intentionally go back and add in mismatching lines, I think more probably what happened is that the ADR studio got the original older version of the script, and then they kind of forgot to send them the updated script, so they ended up reading the older version for lines that normally would be dubbed in as part of the ADR process. That's a theory. I have a whole video on it of this is clearly not what they're saying. Their jawline seen from behind doesn't match up with what they're saying. But you may have seen from my channel, this theory starting to pop up for more than one person, actually, that they seemed like they were hyping that she'd attack the Red Keep and it would set off a wildfire chain reaction. What I have discovered is sort of half of that not specifically the Red Keep is involved, but yes, there is a wildfire chain reaction involving the concept of human shields in the streets intermixed with Lannister soldiers. Now, it's also possible, I still think, that there was yet an earlier version of the script in which she did attack the Red Keep as a central hub, but this was later taken out. Like, scripts go through like a dozen stages. I mean, the thing archived at the Writers Guild might be version 10, and what we see on screen is version 12, and it's possible that in like version 7, earlier than the table read, she was really attacking the Red Keep, and then they just forgot to take out some relic dialogue and update it. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter for us in this case. It's irrelevant. Whether the wildfire chain reaction is set off by attacking the Red Keep or just by attacking the city in general, it happens. What triggered it may have been different in an earlier version, but it's still accidental. I mean, remember what Jaime said in Season 3, it wasn't just the Red Keep that was loaded with this underneath, or the Great Sept. He said the Mad King intentionally set it up as a dead man's trigger denial that I'm not let Robert rule over the ashes. He set it up to intentionally burn the entire city, not just the Red Keep. So it's spread out that if you set one part off, all of it will go off. That Jaime said it wasn't just under the Red Keep, it was everywhere. It was all the tunnels under the city, it was under inns, under brothels, under stables, under taverns. It was everywhere. So basically what we're saying is that despite our suspicions, the wildfire plot wasn't what you'd call a Keystone army. like how killing the Night King instantly destroyed all the White Walkers. It's not that the hub, there has to be a hub at the Red Keep to destroy. No, setting off one part of this, just like under a tavern or whatever, it's a flammable substance. You know, it'll spread to all the other parts no matter which part you spark it at. So that's apparently what happened. Now, it remains possible that there's this earlier draft where it was the Red Keep. Not important. I can't prove that. And even if it's true, that's only worse for Benioff and Weiss. That's even worse. It makes it very clear that Daenerys didn't know it was going to happen because it's while I was trying to shoot Cersei and set off her doomsday weapon. But because we can't prove that, and it would only be worse for them, let's stick to what we can prove, because what we can prove from this filming script is incriminating enough. That it says there's just wildfire caches that are hidden throughout the city going up in flame because there's this giant dragon attack, and that these are what spread and destroy most of the city. King's Landing is accidentally devastated by wildfire. Even the books are hinting that Cersei's going to do that. Cersei is the Mad Queen. It's not Daenerys going crazy. We have script evidence. We have quotes from the VFX team in the audio commentaries that we changed this. And third, we have concept art of this. What more proof do you need that there was a change? And that this isn't Dany going crazy is legitimate because we've been planning it since Season 3. You weren't even planning this when you started making Season 8 itself. The second of the two big takeaways from the archived script is that it never specifically describes Daenerys intentionally massacring only civilians. In fact, its description of any of her specific actions in the attack on the city is so notably short and vague that it suspiciously seems like it was deliberately vague. Or at the very least, reading it, you can see how Emilia Clarke, when she read it, did not get the impression that Daenerys was needlessly massacring entire crowds of just civilians. That isn't a good excuse. That when your script is so vague that your lead cast member couldn't pick up on, I'm massacring civilians for no reason because I'm crazy, that isn't our fault for misinterpreting it. And going through it, you get the impression and start to suspect that they were trying to be manipulative. They were trying to be vague, but judge that as you will. What I'm going to do now is read a series of long excerpts from the archived version, which consist of all. I'm not leaving anything out. I'm cutting out the Arya parts, or the parts where they quote a Robert Frost poem. But all of the parts that actually describe Daenerys' actions in attacking the city. What is the dragon doing? From the moment the bells start going off, signifying surrender, concluding with when she's attacking the Red Keep itself. Goes on for a bit after that, but it's not really different from on screen. And yeah, Cersei's in the Red Keep. Why would you think that's a problem that she's attacking the Red Keep? It's the part where she's attacking the city between that is what we're focused on. So this is the sum total of what the script says about what's happening in plain text. All Emilia had to go on. Pages 30 to 31 of the script. Dany sees all the people below, like little ants. Lannister red intermingled with fleeing civilians. She has won, but she sees the Red Keep, the castle that her family built, that belongs to her, occupied by the false queen. She has come so far, and she will go further. Oh, blood will out, it cannot be contained. It's quoting a Robert Frost poem for some reason. Drogon takes to the sky. Drogon enters the frame as Dany dives back down for the final consummation, spitting fire on the city below. If you read Kim Renfro's report on this last year, she focused on Dany's mental state going up to this point, and she revealed the Robert Frost poem thing because it was really weird and noteworthy. But let's continue on. That doesn't really say what is she attacking after that paragraph, just that, okay, Lannister soldiers intermingled with fleeing civilians. She's angry seeing the Red Keep. and she starts attacking. What is she attacking? Exterior, skies over King's Landing, day. From the POV of terrified civilians trying to flee the monster that would burn them all alive, we see Drogon tearing over the streets of the capital. Drogon strafes them all, soldiers and civilians alike. All die equally. Exterior King's Landing Plaza, day. Seeing their queen attack the city is all the excuse for men need. They've come too far to stop now. Grey Worm hurls his spear across the plaza into an unfortunate Lannister guard's chest. Jon is shoved aside as Northmen surge forward, cutting down more Lannisters as they try to take arms again. Exterior King's Landing streets, skies, day. Drogon rains fire and blood on the people of King's Landing. He torches a platoon of Lannister soldiers who are running from the invaders. His flames cut off the escape route of the rest of the Lannisters, who now have no choice but to face Grey Worm and his Unsullied. He burns a trail of firestorms across the streets, and the fires quickly spread to engulf much of the rest of the city as she heads for the Red Keep. Exterior Red Keep. Drogon circles the main spire of the keep like an eagle stalking its prey. Then Dany begins to attack the building itself. Drogon's fire smashes into the walls, obliterating them. Interior Cersei's chambers. Drogon's attack is felt physically here, and Cersei has to hold on to something to steady herself. Then, page 35, after cutting back from an Arya moment, exterior King's Landing, Red Keep day. For one of the few moments in this entire sequence, we're tight on the flying Dany as she looks at the exterior of the throne room, the room her ancestors built. She sees the Lannister lion in the stained glass window where the seven-pointed star used to be. This symbol of everything that has been taken from her, of everything she's had to fight from the moment she began fighting, drives her to fury. Drogon attacks the Red Keep, blasting apart the most iconic building in the world, piece by massive piece. A column of fire melts a huge chunk of the throne room roof and walls, exposing it to the open air. He hits the base of a tall, thin spire. It topples like a felled tree. They've openly described in behind-the-scenes videos that there was going to be one shot of Dany actually on the dragon looking at the Red Keep. It doesn't add much. And then they had to give this weird explanation of, oh, but then we realized she's death from above, so we wouldn't see her again. I'm going to talk about that more in part 2, the video after this one, of you have 2 separate scenes of Dany seeing the Red Keep and flying into a rage. First the Red Keep, and then the throne room as she gets near. It repeats itself. Maybe that's why they cut it out, and there's concept art of this, but they never hid that. They even openly described, oh, there's this one shot we had for seeing the Red Keep right before she starts shooting it. But did they switch this around in editing? Is the shot of Dany's face contorting with rage when she starts shooting the audience what she thought was when she's angrily looking at the Red Keep and Cersei? We don't know. But this is everything in the script that actually details in any way what is happening between when the bells of surrender go off and when she's attacking the Red Keep. And at that point, it's Cersei. It's not a problem to attack her. And this is a single paragraph of information. 4 to 5 sentences, depending on how you count. Now, if I cut out the parts describing her attacking the Red Keep or describing what her army is doing, which is pretty much what we saw on the screen, parts describing her mental state, purely focusing on the parts describing exactly what the dragon's actions in the attack are, this is a paragraph. Now, let me just say it really fast just to show this. Dany sees all the people below like little ants. Lannister red intermingled with fleeing civilians. That's important. Dany dives back down for the final consummation, spitting fire on the city below. From the POV of terrified civilians trying to flee the monster that would burn them all alive, we see Drogon tearing in the streets of the capital. Drogon strafes them all, soldiers and civilians alike, all die equally. I'm underlining the important parts here that stand out. Drogon rains fire and blood on the people of King's Landing. Meaning what exactly? Then, specifically, he torches a platoon of Lannister guards who were running from the invaders. His flames cut off the escape route of the rest of the Lannisters, who now have no choice but to face Grey Worm and the Unsullied. He burns a trail of firestorms across the streets, and the fire quickly spreads to engulf much of the rest of the city as she heads for the Red Keep. This is a paragraph. That's it. This is all that Emilia Clarke had to go on because they told her not to read the storyboards. And the result of this is the only thing in Emilia Clarke's mind when she was in that green screen room filming this. The result was all of those mismatching behind the scenes comments she made where she goes, Daenerys is ruthless but not insane, in a video titled The Mad Queen that HBO tried to hide from us. And saying in the Blu-ray commentary, at the time I was filming Dany's final scene, I was distinctly confused at how Kit as Jon's performance didn't seem to match the extent of the destruction. Didn't match the extent of the destruction I was informed about by the script alone. Yeah. At no point does this paragraph, single paragraph, at no point does it specify Daenerys is intentionally massacring only civilians with no soldiers. And yes, that is a crucial distinction. Never says burning crowds consisting of only women and children when she could just as easily be flying straight to the Red Keep. She's taking her sweet time to burn refugee crowds that don't have any soldiers in them. It doesn't say that. That is what she does in the final on-screen version. Let's break this down bit by bit. The one paragraph worth of description given in text to Emilia starts by saying, what are the only distinctive things other than she's shooting fire and blood? Starts by saying, Lannister red intermingled with civilians. It's saying, there's Lannister soldiers intermixed with crowds of civilians as human shields, which matches how in episode 4 they were saying in dialogue the Lannisters are going to use refugees as human shields, and then they didn't follow up on it. This is what the script is describing in this episode. And then after specifying they're not just crowds of civilians, they're civilians intermixed with soldiers, next line of note, Drogon strafes them all, burning soldiers and civilians. Soldiers and civilians alike, never only civilians. Drogon rains fire and blood. Notice they emphasize in these 4 to 5 sentences, the emphasis is always that soldiers are intermixed with civilians. That they are describing civilians getting caught in the crossfire. Mentally distance yourself from the fact that you have seen the aired version. With no prior knowledge, what would Emilia Clarke think looking at this in October 2017 when they had the big table read? No storyboards, no pre-visual materials, just this one paragraph of plain text to go on. What would Emilia Clarke think reading this? She would think that Daenerys is taking revenge by attacking Lannister soldiers who are trying to retreat, rather than letting them surrender. And that civilians are getting caught in the crossfire. Collateral damage, not massacre. She isn't intentionally massacring civilians. And in contrast, the aired version has just shot after shot of her burning crowds that don't have any soldiers in them. The script never specifies that. And it's the number of times they do it, the number of shots and angles where it's yet another shot of burning women and children with no soldiers visible. And this is giving the impression to people watching it, trying to write up news descriptions of it, she's gone crazy and is genociding the city. Genocide doesn't technically mean that, but massacring the city. These were terms people were using. The script doesn't say it. The script has one line, she's attacking soldiers who are mixed with civilians, followed by 5 minutes of just burning refugees. These aren't the same. It's at best misleading, unintentionally, and at worst it's a cover-up. Now I want to do something for the sake of comparison. I made a video clip of the destruction of King's Landing, purely focused on what we see Daenerys and her dragon actually doing, skipping over the parts where the Northmen and Unsullied army is rampaging through the streets, and cutting out all the long, slow-motion close-up shots focused on Kit Harington's reaction face to pander him for Emmy Awards. I edit it down to every time you actually see the dragon doing something. And the clip I ended up with is about 2.5 minutes long. So, homework assignment here in the comments section, exercise, I want you to watch this clip and try to write up a description of it as you would provide to someone who hadn't seen it yet. Like, try to picture yourself as a screenwriter. In what words would you convey what's happening to Emilia Clarke when you presented her with a script? Now, the point of this exercise is to show you that if you have to visually, describe what's visually going on, this script is very misleading and doesn't convey what your descriptive text is saying at all. That it never says, crowd of only civilians is being killed. And one line, oh, she's raining fire and blood on the city. What does that mean? So it's one thing for me to say this. It's quite another to see it and then try writing it up for yourself and realizing just how much visual information they limited from the script. And again, if you're going to say, well, that's what storyboards are for, then why didn't Emilia Clarke look at the storyboards who told her not to do that? So I already did this, my version, and I'm going to read it off to you, and if you want to do your own, back up the clip and mute the audio, I guess, so you can do your own without my voice. And there's no dialogue in it, so you don't need audio for this. So this is how I would, in good faith, try to describe CGI that isn't done yet to an actor of, okay, this is what we're planning for the whole episode. Here's the table read before we've actually started production. This is what we envision happening. And this is my feeble attempt at that. But try your own of just how much information they left out. Daenerys takes off from the walls on her dragon. Shot of dragon blasting a fleeing crowd, and we can see a few Lannister soldiers sprinkle in. We can see their red cloaks if you pause it, though it's happening pretty fast. Next shot. We do have one prominent head-on shot of Lannister soldiers fleeing towards the camera and being burned. Clearly this is a military target. This is pretty much what the script was describing. Now, burning a crowd of only civilians with no visible soldiers in it at all. This is not crossfire, this is massacre. Tyrion reaction shot, then another time Daenerys burns a crowd of only civilians with no visible soldiers in it. Jon and Grey Worm with surrendering Lannister soldiers. Behind them we can see a blast of fire, though you have to pause to see it actually came straight from the dragon. It's not a secondary fire. Unsullied and Northmen take this as a signal to massacre the Lannister soldiers. Shots of Lannister soldiers already on fire. Long, destructive shot of the dragon carving a huge swath of destruction, destroying entire city streets, with prominent shots of women holding crying children in it before being incinerated. Cut to Cersei watching from the Red Keep, in wide shot of the cityscape, as Daenerys' dragon doesn't head straight for the castle, but zigzags back and forth to intentionally burn as much of the city as possible, carpet bombing it indiscriminately and not noticeably picking out targets. Another huge crowd of civilians being blasted with fire. No visible soldiers. Another huge shot of the dragon carving a broad swath of fire through crowds of only civilians, women, and children. Big close-up on a civilian woman turning and being flash incinerated. No visible soldiers. Drogon finishes blasting a huge section of the city which is already on fire and now flees to the Red Keep. I hope you guys can do a better version of that, but still, there are at least four major shots, sequences of a large crowd being burned alive. And this isn't counting, the wide shots where, like, Cersei is looking at her from a distance, carving up destruction on a large scale like that. The close-up shots, like the woman turning and being flash incinerated, there are four of those at least, depending on how you count. And if you were Benioff and Weiss, and this was the image of the show that was in your head and in your storyboards, is the script adequately conveying this? No. That the script, it sounds like she's shooting soldiers, and you start to wonder, maybe they did that on purpose, compartmentalization of information, to limit this from Emilia Clarke. And on its own, I wouldn't say that, but then the fact that, why didn't she look at the storyboards? Who told her not to do that? That someone was limiting the information they were exposed to. Or at least it seems that way. And also, well, touching on the issue of limited information to Emilia Clarke, is that her dialogue in the next episode doesn't really match up with this. That in her final throne room scene, when Jon says, "You burned women and children," her response is, "She used their innocence as a weapon against me." Cersei used their innocence as a weapon against me. And she's describing human shields. They were setting up human shields in episode 4. And at what point did this change? And I don't know, did the showrunners want Daenerys to sound deluded, so they didn't tell Emilia that, so she'd sound earnest, so the audience would think, oh, she's crazy, that's not what really happened? But if so, you would have told Emilia right after it happened that, no, this was to get a performance, and they didn't. And there wouldn't have been all that wildfire special effects work that she wasn't even exposed to, that all these other changes. That it really seems like this was a retcon at the last minute, and they just artfully wrote around it. That it wasn't even to get a good performance out of Clarke. It's something intentional. That just, we retroactively realized it, we liked it this way. There's a couple of variants, I'm not sure. I'm going to talk about this more in part 2. But right now, in terms of the script as an adequate description of the geography of the battle, the filming script loosely does describe the Lannisters using crowds of civilians as human shields, saying they're intermingled with them, soldiers and civilians. Point being that Emilia Clarke, reading this script, would have gotten the impression that they were using human shields, and thus her line about using their innocence as a weapon against me, that would have made complete sense to her. But the actual on-screen events don't reflect this script whatsoever in terms of soldiers using civilians mixed in as human shields. That, in turn, touches on the broader issue of that the geography of the battle doesn't really make sense, though that's been a recurrent problem since they went off book in Season 5. Not just for battles, like plot mechanics, and I'm not even talking about the speed issue. Earlier in Season 8, in Episode 4, that I have a whole big commentary clip on my channel of this, that even in the commentary, the cast and crew are pointing out that Tyrion's scene with Cersei pleading with her at the castle walls, it doesn't make sense, that they're at the city walls. She's 40 feet above him and can't hear him when he's speaking in urgent, hushed tones. He should be shouting. But they want it to be hushed and urgent and emotional because they want it to be this big scene showing off Dinklage for an Emmy Award. It's awards pandering, and I yell about that more, but the issue here isn't just that the geography doesn't make sense, but they often try to use a lot of close-ups to hide when the wider geography of the scene is nonsensical. That whole scene, they actually tried to paper over it by it's just close-ups for this extended scene, and it's really obvious. And what I did was I took like the 1 or 2 fraction of a second wide shots, turned them into screenshots, and just ran the audio to show how ridiculous this really is. The way they filmed it couldn't really cover that. Or like the Long Night battle, where, again, in the commentary, and I have clips of this, They want the whole thing to just be a melee pile of the lead characters for 20 minutes in a continuous one shots, and they wanted that at Battle of the Bastards too. They said it's just going to be all focused on Kit the whole time, and well, yeah, but you need to see the wider battle. The directors would argue with them and at least get some shots. Problem is, the wider battle doesn't make sense. There are plot holes in it. In Long Night, for example, like, if you just have close-ups of Brienne in a man pile, in a melee pile, fighting zombies, you might not notice, like you would in a wide shot, that, wow, why did we form up all of our trebuchets in front of our infantry line and then abandon them? That makes no sense. Things like that. So you can see how they're trying to use that, oh no, you're on the ground in the chaos of the melee, so you can't see what's going around. They use that as a smokescreen to cover plot holes. And in this case, I mean, I think you've all seen behind-the-scenes videos where they're going, oh no, it's on the ground, in the chaos of the ground in the fall of King's Landing, so you can't see from Dany's perspective. I think, at least in part, that hid how some of it doesn't make sense. In this case, it's not a matter of speed. I mean, a dragon can zip from the Red Keep to the outer castle wall pretty quickly. It's, now that we've seen this, actually look at the order in which things happen in the whole episode and find clips of this on YouTube or watch the episode again or read a description, whatever. The order things happen in is that after she's done attacking all the city streets, and when she's attacking the Red Keep itself, it switches back to Jon with what would have been wildfire explosions, yelling at all of his men, we have to pull back, and suddenly Daenerys and her dragon are above him again. Then it immediately cuts from Jon to Arya's big escape scene where the dragon is strafing all around her in the streets and she can't tell which way it's going because she's on the ground. And from the Arya scene, it immediately cuts back to the Red Keep, which is still under attack by the dragon. So it's just, wait a minute, if the whole point is that the sight of the Red Keep drove her into rage and that specifically she wants to kill Cersei for Missandei and all the other stuff, why would she stop attacking the Red Keep to switch back to attacking the city? And they even said openly that, in the original version of this, Cersei and Jaime would be killed in the dungeons by a blast of dragonfire. We changed that because we want their bodies to be recognizable. But even then, I checked, rewatched it, you can hear the dragon shrieking and the thudding impact through the castle of every time a fire blast hits it. So, yes, even in the final aired version, the dragon is suddenly back at the Red Keep. Like, why did it stop only to go back? Why would it stop short of destroying the whole building? These are obvious questions. And, okay, in fairness, I think you could argue that what they were trying to show was that they were showing it out of chronological order for the sake of dramatic effect, which is fine. That maybe Jaime and Cersei died when we, the audience, saw her attacking the Red Keep, and that by the time Arya was fleeing through the streets, Jaime and Cersei were already dead chronologically, and she was just attacking any remaining Lannister soldiers. Fair enough. That's a stretch of why is she suddenly not attacking the Red Keep, then attacking it again. Okay, let's give them that as, we showed it to you out of order. Then, where are we seeing those human shields, guys? Where are we seeing those human shields? She used their innocence against me. That this is random, and it really seems like that whole, no, you never see it from Dany's perspective in the air, because that would tip the audience off that this doesn't make much sense. That it's random. Now, when you think about it, my second big takeaway from the script, that it's incredibly short and vague and doesn't adequately convey this, it really breaks down into 3 subpoints. First one is that it never specifically states that she's targeting only civilians. It only says soldiers and civilians, which gives the wrong impression, regardless of their intent. Second point, 2B here, is that it emphasizes in the original script that Daenerys isn't just in a blind rage. She's ruthless, but she's still thinking tactically. That it describes her intentionally targeting Lannister soldiers, and there are civilian human shields that are getting killed here and there in the crossfire, but it doesn't describe her as truly in a mindless berserk state, firing indiscriminately without thought. That in the script version, it makes it pretty clear that she's targeting Lannister soldiers, always crowds with soldiers in them, and it's that key point where it says, and she burns the street behind the main group of Lannister soldiers to cut off their retreat so her land army can kill them. Compare this to the on-screen version, doesn't really convey that well. I had to rewatch it a lot of times right before I was making this video. It was the first time I even picked up on it. That when I saw it, I thought it was a secondary explosion. Just a fire from some other part of the city randomly. I had to rewatch it a couple of times. I'm running the footage here. That, yeah, you can see it's a blast from the dragon directly because it's a straight line. It's coming straight from its mouth. It's not an exploding building or something. That isn't clear. That, for whatever reason, they kept emphasizing, no, we're going to see the destruction of the city from the ground level, and you'll never see it from Daenerys' point of view. Well, that means you can't explain her mental state. Is she crazy, shooting everything? Is she singling out targets? Whether intentionally or not, you removed her POV, literally, to see what her side of things is. They compare this to, like, Season 6, when she's burning the slaver fleet at Marine, and we have over-the-shoulder shots where you see the ship she's looking at and trying to burn, and then she burns it. That doesn't happen here. That because in this shot, the dragon is totally off-screen. The shot just comes from out of frame. You have to pay attention to see it's a dragon shot, not a secondary explosion. So you don't pick up on that she's still intentionally targeting things like Lannister soldiers, has the wherewithal to not just blast at anything that moves, but think 2 steps ahead to cut off their retreat by shooting the street they were going to be heading towards. You don't pick up on that at all, that in the final version, she seems a lot more mindless with rage and insanity than in the script where she still has objectives. So the question I present is, does our text-based description of this attack resemble what Emilia Clarke saw in the table read in October 2017? Are they the same, or just a misinterpretation? No. At best, this script is incredibly vague and something to be ashamed of for its incompetence in conveying information. But there's so many omissions in just the same not-so-coincidental places relative to the final version that it really seems like this was not the same intent, and it's an outright different version of the script, a different vision of what this episode would be. And at worst, it's that it was deliberately trying to be vague to hide it from the cast. I'm not sure of that last one, but I'll talk about this a lot more in the next video, of just at what point were they changing things. But I don't know if this was intentionally to mislead the cast or not, but even if it was, it still sounds different enough, that she's tactically shooting mostly Lannister soldiers in it. It's not really the same thing. And the impression on Emilia Clarke brings me to the last of the 3 subpoints. Okay, point 2C here. Point 2A was never actually says she's just massacring civilians. 2B is she's picking out intelligent targets. Point 2C is, this is really short. Just physically, I mean, that it's about 4 to 5 lines. It's about 2 pages of script. And for Emilia Clarke reading this, whether intentionally or not, it must have given the impression that she blasts a couple of soldiers in front of the gates really fast, then heads straight to the Red Keep. And my basis for that is the behind-the-scenes videos where Clarke basically keeps thinking of it in terms of she gets angry when she sees the Red Keep and says she has to effing kill her Cersei. And she isn't describing making carpet bombing runs. Now, either this is an entirely different version she's describing than even what we have here, or at best, is what I'm saying, at best, the destruction of the city, it seems so quick that by the 5th line it's saying, and then she flies to the Red Keep, that it doesn't sound like it's going to be this really drawn-out sequence with slow-motion shots of civilian crowds burning, like 4 to 5 different crowds of civilians are burning in this with no soldiers in them. It doesn't sound like she heads to the Red Keep relatively quickly. So that's all of the second main takeaway. The script is very vague and never... It's what it doesn't say. It never actually describes what we saw on screen, and there's even things like she's picking off Lannister soldiers intelligently they left out. And that's not even considering the first takeaway. These aren't in isolation. That this is paired with the first point, that the wildfire chain reaction, which isn't just a misinterpretation or vague wording, it's even more confirmed to be an outright change. That when you put the two of them together, it must have really sounded to Emilia Clarke like the impression they're giving is that in the original version, this is what Clarke is describing, Daenerys blasts retreating Lannister soldiers near the gates, accidentally kills a lot of human shield civilians in the crossfire, but not on purpose singling them out, and it's Cersei's fault for using human shields, and then quickly flies off to the Red Keep, while the fires her dragon started quickly spread to hidden wildfire caches that are just everywhere below inns, alehouses, stables, which soon ignite, setting off a chain reaction which unintentionally takes out most of the city. So the combined effect of these two major differences, the wildfire chain reaction, which they cut out, and that the archived script never describes her massacring crowds of only civilians. It's so vague, I strongly suspect that it's vague on purpose. It's not just what this script says that's incriminating, it's what it doesn't say. It's a lie by omission, which is a lie, that's why it has the word lie in it. Now I'm going to split this off now into part 2, which is analysis of this, asking the questions of what did the showrunners know, and when did they know it, and at what point did they lie to Emilia Clarke, and at what point did they tell her the truth? Starting with a new clip from Emilia Clarke from the audio commentary, where she explains how she eventually found out what actually happens on screen.